Jesus is coming again.
And Jesus answering said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment, and wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. And by chance there came down a certain priest that way, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. And likewise a Levite, when he was at the place, came and looked on him, and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was. And when he saw him, he had compassion on him, and went to him, and bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the morrow when he departed, he took out 2 pence, and gave them to the host, and said unto him, take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay thee. Which now of these 3 thinkest thou was neighbor unto him that fell among the thieves? And he said, he that showed mercy on him. Then said Jesus unto him, go, and do thou likewise. The innkeeper. The innkeeper. As I mentioned last Sabbath, if you look at your Sabbath School Quarterly, the cover, what is there? What is there? A picture of the Good Samaritan attending to the man who fell among thieves. Now, Christ told this parable in response to a question that was posed to him by a lawyer. He came to Christ. They said Christ had scant regard for the 10 Commandments. And so he came to Christ, and he said, Master, what good thing must I do to inherit eternal life? And he answered and said, what? What? What did Christ say? What is written in the law? How readest thou? Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. But he was now willing to justify himself, and he asked the question. What was the question he asked? Who is my neighbor? And Christ proceeded to tell him the story of the Good Samaritan. And Christ said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment, and wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. This man took a journey from Jerusalem, and he's journeying to where? Jericho. And we are told that area, there was an area of that road that was infested with brigands and vagabonds. And they caught him. They worked him over. They took all that he had and left him there to die. He was half dead. And we are told in verse 31, and by chance there came down a certain priest that way. And when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Now, if you are in trouble, right, and in need of help, as a matter of fact, I get calls all the time. Pastor, pray for me. When you're in trouble or you need some kind of intervention, the person you want to see is who? The pastor. It's not that you can't pray, but people think that if the pastor pray, and there is some merit to it. Yes. Pastor, pray for me. Yes. Pastor, pray with me. Yes. Now here is this man, having been worked over by the thieves, and he's lying on the roadside half dead. And the best person he could desire to see now comes by. Now the priest is heading to Jerusalem because there is where the temple was. And we are told that he saw the man and passed by on the other side. Whatever it was that he had to do in Jerusalem, he was not going to stop, Brother Rob. It was more important to get to Jerusalem to fulfill his priestly duties than to show compassion to the man. And likewise a Levite. The pastor passes by. And then the first elder now shows up. You're laughing. That's true. Those offices would translate to us, those offices today. The first elder comes by, and he does a little better than the pastor. Now, don't get any ideas. And when he was at the place, he came, looked on him, passed by on the other side. He came and he looked, he checked his pulse. The pulse was maybe a little weak, you know. He bent his ears and he checked his breathing. Yes, there was something there. But guess what? He was not going to be bothered. As a matter of fact, both priest and Levi might have thought within themselves that if I linger here too long, I might suffer the same fate as this man. So I had better make a beeline out of here. But he checks his pulse. He's not dead. Well, you know. Leave him to the tender mercies of God. And he passes by on the other side. But you know, there's always a but. Yes. But a certain Samaritan, when, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him. The Samaritan is journeying on that same road. Now, as far as the Jews were concerned, the Samaritans were without God and without hope in the world. You know they call Christ a Samaritan. Yes. And you know what went with that? Yes. You know what was the implication of that? Yes. You know what's the implication? That he was a half-breed. Are you there? The Samaritans were half-breeds. Yes. Oh, Brother Rob. Yes. When they went into the Assyrian and Babylonian captivity, there were those who remained. And that Jewish seed was mingled with Assyrian and Babylonians. That's how you get the Samaritans. And as far as the Jews were concerned, notice what the woman at the well said to Christ. How is it that you, being a Jew, asketh me, a woman of Samaria, for a drink? For what? The Jews have what? No dealings with the Samaritans. They were outcasts. They were treated as if they had leprosy. But here is a man who is counted out, who you do not expect godliness and compassion from. Thank you. He is the one who stops. He is the one who what? Feels the compassion. That is why we don't ever stop to number Israel. Amen. Did you hear me? Amen. Do not weigh someone's Christianity with the scales of your eyes. Amen. Do not say Jew, Samaritan, Samaritan, Jew. Don't ever do that. For God sees, not as man sees. Man can only look on the outside. God looks upon the heart. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was. And when he saw him, he had compassion on him. And went to him. Notice, he goes to him, right? And does what? Bound up his wounds. First aid. Pouring in oil and wine. And set him on his own beast. And brought him to an inn. And took care of him. Let me tell you about this word compassion. I'll give you the Greek word, and you don't have to. You won't see that again on an exam. Are you there? Splagitsomai. Let me tell you what it means. Are you there? Are you there? Yeah. I remember as a child growing up, and you climb the guava tree with your friends, and somebody falls. And you would hear one of the neighbors bring some sweet, sugar water. Yes. Right? Yes. And give it to him. And then you will hear one of the old mothers, bring something so that I can ban my belly. Yes. Are you there? Yes. That word speaks to the strongest emotion we can ever experience. When Christ saw the widow of Nain, are you there? He had compassion on her. Now, what did Christ see? Here was a widow, meaning that she didn't have a husband. Here was her only son, who is now dead. If there was anyone caught between a rock and a hard place, it was this widow. And those were not the days of social programs. Are you there? So here it is. She doesn't have a husband. And she's now burying her only son. The only hope of any sustenance is now what? Gone. And Christ perceived her situation. And notice what the Bible said. When Christ saw her, he had compassion on her. Christ inside was shaking like this. That's what that word intimates. And here it is, the Samaritan. Seeing the man's situation, he's on the point of death. He doesn't consider his own safety. But he pauses. He kneels down. He administers oil and wine. cleans out the wounds. Uh-oh.
Yes.
And then he puts in the oil. And he sets him on his own beast.
Yes.
The man is unable to walk. So he now gives up his comfort because the man is in need. Sets him on his own beast and takes him to an inn. And brought him to an inn and took care of him. And on the morrow, when he departed, he brought him in at night. And he stayed up all night, ministering to the needs of this man. And on the morrow, when he departed, look what the Bible says. He did what? He took out 2 pence and gave them to the host, and said unto him, take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay thee. Look at what the Samaritan does. He takes care of him. He did not say, my job is done. I picked him up from the roadside. I brought him to the inn. And what? I took care of him. But the cost that the man's care incurred became the Samaritan's debt. Because he took out 2 pence and did what? He gave it to the host, the innkeeper. And he says to the innkeeper, take care of him. He handed him off to what? To the innkeeper. So the care is now what? Continued.
Yes, continuing, yes.
And then he says to the innkeeper, take care of him. Do not let monetary constraints determine the care this man receives. You take care of him. I am going. And when I come again, whatever it is that you have spent, whatever, no limit. Whatever it is thou spendest more, when I come again, I'll repay thee. We know in this story that the Samaritan represents who?
Christ.
Jesus Christ. There's a spiritual dimension to this.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
The Samaritan represents Jesus Christ. Are you there?
Yes.
He risked his life.
Amen.
Now this man is, notice, the man is journeying from Jerusalem to Jericho. Jerusalem was the place where God placed his name.
Amen.
It was the center of religion and salvation. Salvation is what? Of the Jews.
Yes.
It was the place where God placed his name. So this man is journeying from a place that is centered in God to where?
Jericho.
That is why he's going down to Jericho.
Yes.
What we know about Jericho? Jericho was a city what? Marked for destruction.
Yes.
Huh? So the man has left a place of safety.
Yes.
And he's going to a place
Destruction.
that is destined for destruction. And there is nothing else that could happen to him but that which befell him.
Yes.
Because from the time you leave God's center and you're journeying to a place that is marked for destruction, you must encounter the enemy along the way.
Yes.
And my Bible tells me that the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. You didn't hear what I just said. Well, you hear what the Bible just said. The tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. So here it is, he left the place of safety, Jerusalem, where God's name was placed. And he's going towards Jericho. And that old serpent has his imps along the way. And they caught him. Huh? And they worked him over. But guess what? Even though he was worked over by the devil, there was still some God left in him. Because he was not fully dead. He was not dead. The pulse was weak. The heartbeat was weak. The breathing was labored. But guess what? He was still alive. A broken what? Reed. Help me with that text. And a smoking flax will he not quench. Help me with that. Something. But in other words, when the text says a smoking flax will he not quench, as long as there is a little bit of, he's going to fan the flames. And so, the Samaritan who represents Christ in this parable encounters someone who has walked out of church. Left headquarters, the place of safety, and is heading to a place that is marked for destruction. The priests pass by unconcerned. The Levite passed by unconcerned. But what does the Samaritan do? He stops. He does not consider his own safety. But he takes time. And he pours in oil and wine. Oil is symbolic of what? The Holy Spirit. Of who? Not what? The Holy Spirit. And wine is symbolic of what? The blood of Christ. So he pours in the oil and wine to restore this man back to spiritual vitality. And he brings him to the inn. He brings him to the inn. What is the inn? The church. He brings him to the inn, his church. And he spends some time in personal care for this individual. But he has to go. There are other what? Works of rescue, Brother Rob, that he has to perform. And he leaves the wounded man in care of the innkeeper. And he says, take care of him. I'm going, but I'm coming again. Who's the innkeeper? We are the innkeeper. Amen. He brings them in, wounded and battered and bruised by the enemy. And they come to us in various stages of destruction. Some are practically dead, some just got a few wounds. But the bottom line is, he brings them to the inn, his church. And he says to us, take care of them. But before he leaves, he takes out what? 2 pence. And he gives them, and he gives the 2 pence to the host. If Christ is the Samaritan in this parable, and he has left 2 pence with the innkeeper, what does the 2 pence signify? Old and New Testament. He's left us his word.
Yes.
He left the Old and New Testament with his church.
Yes.
And he says, when they come in, wounded and bruised and battered, you restore them through the ministry of my word. Feed them with the bread of life. I'm going, but I'm coming again. Oh, yes. He says, I am going, but guess what? I am coming again. And whatsoever thou spendest more, whatever it costs, make certain that you minister to them completely. I'm going, but I'm coming again. Spend what it costs to take care of them and to keep them well.
Yes. Yes.
And when I come again,
Yes. I will bring a reward for you.
whatsoever it is that you have spent,
Yes.
whatever, don't let cost restrict your ministry. Whatever you spend, when I come again, I will repay you. Which one of these three, these two thinkest thou, was neighbor to him who fell among these three? Yes. And the lawyer would not have the courage. Prejudice dies hard. Huh? He would not say the Samaritan, he wouldn't let that word cross his lips. But he says, whoever it is that showed compassion to the poor, to him that was in need. And Christ said to him, go and do thou likewise. Church, we don't determine how the condition in which they come in. Are you there? Listen, as I said, some got sore eyes. Huh? Some got a sore foot. Some the heart is like stone. Huh? Some the head crazy. Messed up. But guess what? God has placed within his church everything that a soul in distress needs. And through the ministry of singing, through the ministry of teaching, through the ministry of preaching, through the ministry of works of compassion, guess what? Souls are restored back in the image or likeness of God. Some, it's a book. Some, it's an invitation. But whatever it is, whatever it costs, don't you ever take the cost into consideration. Are you there? As long as there's a soul to be saved. Guess what? There is no price that is equivalent to the value of a soul. Are you there? Because if there were one soul, only one, Christ would have left the grandeur and splendor of heaven and come for that one soul. So if he would give his life for a soul, why do we hold on? Why do we hold on to his money? Notice what I just said.
His money. Oh, yes.
I repeat for emphasis. Why do we hold on to his money and think it hard to give, to relieve the sufferings of his children? It's his money. And it must not be spent to our glory and gratification. We must find ways to give, to relieve the suffering of humanity. And I ain't talking about the government, I'm talking about me and you. That's where it starts. That's where it starts.
Hallelujah.
Huh? Let me say this to you. An adult can bear hunger.
Oh, yes. Not a child. Oh, yes. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
I'm glad it came home. Oh yes.
Oh, yes.
You watch a mother and you don't. I know about it. You watch a mother with children and she ain't got nothing. Nothing to feed them. We don't know nothing about that here. Are you there?
Yes.
Listen to me. Listen. If we are hungry, it's because we didn't get time to eat. We busy doing stuff. We didn't get time to eat. Or guess what? We skipping a meal. We cutting calories to do what? Cut the weight. When we go to the refrigerator, if we want, we don't feel like peanut butter. We don't feel like jelly. We don't feel like butter. We don't feel like cheese.
Choices.
Look how
Yes.
many choices, man.
It's all there.
Yes.
Look how many choices we got.
Let me tell you something. I've seen hundreds line up for a bake and some juice, mixed juice. You hear me? Are you there? And let me tell you something. The parents in the neighborhood so happy that they know that night them children ain't going to sleep hungry. You didn't hear me. And as Brother Walker said this morning, he is a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church because an old man and his wife took time out to feed them. You didn't hear me. Let me tell you something. You hear my story over and over. I know what it is to get the cornmeal and the oats and the powder milk and stuff as a child. Listen to me. I am not ashamed to talk about it.
Amen. Amen.
You meet some people and they want to project a picture of grandeur and this. No! I thank God for poverty. I know what it is to go to school with a cup of tea, bush tea. Ain't got milk to put in it.
Oh, you don't need milk? Oh, no.
But now, yeah, you don't need milk in it. But back then, yeah, bush water. And then as you're going to school, you hear your mother voice ringing in your ears. Make certain you are going to drink the milk and the biscuit.
Yes. You got your cup.
You get your cup, you walk to school with your cup.
Your cup and your belt.
When we go to the closet on Sabbath morning, we get giddy. Are you there? To choose, that don't happen with us men, but with the ladies. Because, we got a uniform. But we get giddy. Oh, I wore this one 3 months ago. Uh-oh. I wore this 3 months ago. I can't wear it today. Honey. Soul winning costs. Are you there? Yes. And as we were discussing in Sabbath school this morning, our ministry must extend beyond our own household. Because those on the outside are not of the household of faith. And as we minister to them, guess what? We are doing soul winning.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Notice what he said. Yes. I was in prison.
Yes.
And you came unto me.
Yes.
I was sick and you visited me.
Yes.
I was hungry and you fed me. Naked and you clothed me.
Yes.
For inasmuch as we have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. Let me say this much to you. America can make us hard and cold.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yes.
Where we become so self-centered.
Yes.
Acquiring. Yes, there is a place for that. But as he blesses us, yes, we must in turn be a blessing to others. Amen. Yes. He has gone, and his promise of return is sure. Yes. And he's left us with two promises, as it were. He says, I'm coming again. And whatever expenses you incur, are you there? When I come again. Listen. There's a situation I got to discuss with the elders. A mother in Israel. Are you there? No status in the country. And she's a senior. She's almost 80 years old and lost her child, and help is gone. Are you there? Are you there? It is this church's duty. You hear me? Yes. It is this church's duty to ensure that that mother in Israel get some form of assistance. Amen. Those of you who have heard this story, I'll share it with you. Well, don't close your ears, but you can close one. The ones who didn't hear it, enjoy it for the first time. I'm sitting with the elders right there. There were two needs that we were addressing. Two debts. Are you there? Families had debt. And we decided to give $1,000 to each one of those families. They were not members of Pisgah. And we are there, and we made the decision, gathered the elders. Sunday morning, I noticed I missed a call from the treasurer. That was Brother Danny then. And I called him back. And he said, now we gave out $2,000 this Sabbath. And he said to me, he said, Pastor, you say you're sitting down? I said, yeah, go and talk to me. He said, we gave out $2,000 to help the needs of those two families. Sunday morning now he's doing what? Counting the receipts that, that came in Sabbath. And when he opened an envelope, there was a check for $5,000. And you know what the person wrote as a memo? to the needy members of Pisgah. We gave out 2. Now that's God's mathematics. We gave 2. We had another situation. This person was not a member of Pisgah. Lost mother and brother within the space of 4 days. Are you there? In the space of 4 days. I can't remember if it's the mother died first and then the brother, but one died the Sunday, the other one died the Wednesday. The mother first. And those 2 individuals got to be buried. They at the funeral home. And the funeral home not releasing the body, the 2 bodies, because many have come from the U.S. to bury the dead at home and have come back and didn't fulfill. You know. So it wasn't nothing personal, strictly business. And I got the call. Pastor so. Can't move, can't do nothing because there is no money to bury the dead. Are you there? What do you do in such a situation? Pray? Yes, you pray. Yeah. Let me tell you something. Call the elders. And a decision was made that we are going to bury those 2, that individual's mother and brother. The money was sent. And the 2 funerals, the funerals took place. And that individual, as a Seventh-day Adventist, could leave where they were, unembarrassed and ashamed. What was the other alternative? Staying there for days. And what is happening? The funeral home, more and more expenses racked up because buried both individuals. And Pisgah Treasury didn't go broke. And I say this much to you. God has blessed this church, and the reason he has blessed this church is because of you. There are faithful people in this church who give to the cause of God. And I say this much to you. Whatever you spend, are you there?
Yes.
Whatever you spend,
Yes.
he says, I am coming again. I'll repay you.
Amen.
And the greatest check, permit me, the bestest check one can ever receive
Yes.
is to hear from him these words. Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you, for I was hungered,
And you feed me.
and you fed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. And the rewardees will respond, Lord, when did we do all of this? And he will say, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. Who then is your neighbor? Everyone who needs our help. And as he said to the lawyer, he's saying to us today, go and do thou likewise.